Everybody is worried about starting their seeds. Who's already started seeds? I have. Yes, okay. But what kind of seeds do you start? Do you know? So the first thing that starts with seeds is selecting your seeds and knowing seasons. Knowing when to plant what. And we all go to the store because we get all excited and we go buy all of our seeds and then we want to get them started. And there's a method to the madness on getting seeds started. You don't want to get everything started right now. If you do, you're going to have plants that are too big, too early, and we can't get them outside. So I'm going to step aside here and I'm going to show you here. Seed starting. First thing first, know your zone. Okay? Know your zone. Our zone here is zone A to 6B. The average minimum temperature in a zone A is 5 degrees. The average minimum temperature of 6B is minus 5 degrees. So depending on where you're at, you can see we have fluctuations. We rarely have temperatures below minus. But if you're up in the areas, like in the Horse Heaven Hills area, where you're up a little higher, sometimes you can get colder temperatures. Likewise, you can have the reverse happen, and we can get a cold spot down in the valley when we get what we call an inversion, and we all know what those are, where all the cold air sets down on the bottom and all the warm air goes above the top, and we can't get warm. So that's why you need to kind of pay attention to your cycle where you live and identify what's the best period for you. Know your frost dates. April 15th is generally 7A. 6B, May 1st. And we know we've all had, the last couple of weeks that we've had some really warm weather, but what's coming next week?
20s.
Possibly snow. Now, it might not be a lot, but it is colder, and that means that we can't, again, it's fall spring, we can't jump and get our plants going too early, or we're not going to have success. We've wasted a lot of energy, we've wasted a lot of money because our plants don't germinate. So it's really important. Know your first frost date. I call it first, it's actually last because of the season. And know your first one of this year. What is it going to be? 7A, November 15th. 6B, October 15th. A full month before the other one. So you need to be able to pay attention to that when you're thinking about what you're going to sow in the fall, because you can do fall planting and your spring planting. How soon can you get it in? How long can you leave it in? Okay? So that's the first thing that's really super important. If you want to take a picture so that you have that, that's information.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Are you either 7A or 6B? There's no other options?
Well, zones are divided in A, B, or A or B. Okay. So 7A and 6B are close together.
Okay.
Because you've got 6A, 6B, 7A, 7B. And every zone is divided out that way because there's just a little bit different between them. But this is our area. This is pertinent to us. We have a chair up here. And then there's 2 chairs over here. There's a couple chairs. Grab a chair. So this is for our area. So I'm not going to cover all the other areas, the other zones, because I'm teaching pertinent to what we have here. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
So, gardeningknowhow.com. If you have gardening you can print your map, and it will show you what zones we are in. And I've highlighted here because here we have 2 different zones. If we're in Kennewick, it's different than Franklin County. So Benton County and Franklin County are 2 different zones. So you can look at that and tell what zone you're in and plan your garden that way. Second thing is, on the back of your plants, you'll recognize this. Almost every package has a little map like this, and this also is a zone map. It tells you by color code what your zone is in as a general area, and you'll notice how you've got 7, and it kind of comes around and it fingers down into our area. Okay, so it's just one of those that weird little things. We have a climate because of the rain shadow of the mountains. We have a different climate than areas that are 30 miles away from us. Okay, so ufseeds.com, you can get this information for yourself. Okay, if you can find it here, ufseeds.com. And you can get that information for you. So, plants are divided into cool season, warm season seeds. And we all go to the store, we get all excited, and the first thing we pick out is tomatoes, peppers, right? Don't get them yet. Or get them now if you want to. But don't plant them now, because that's the first thing that everybody wants to start early. I have seen so many pictures of people that are, I got my tomatoes in, I got my peppers in, and they're already up, and guess what? Those things, by the time it comes time to plant, which is like Mother's Day, they're going to be tall and gangly, and they don't do well. You can pat yourself on your back all you want. You can take and transplant those things into a bigger pot, a gallon pot, and stake them up and have them in the greenhouse. It hits the ceiling. And you're going to feel so good. I got these. You're going to have to dig those puppies down a foot in the ground and then wait. They will not produce quickly. You will get nothing for all of those months of baby in that plant and getting it growing. You will get no value because it will not grow. Ask me how I know. Okay? Doesn't work that way. Okay? So don't do it. What you do want to do is focus on your cool weather crops, because come Mother's Day, when everything is out there for everybody to buy, there are some things it's too late to get into the ground. Okay? Brassicas, it's too late to get into the ground. Why? Because they like colder weather and aphids like them. So you want to work with your weather and work with the pests. Some things you want to get started. Your cool season plants. All of these are cool season plants. And all of these with the green asterisks, these are ones that you can start in a container and transplant to your soil in the garden later. Broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, cabbage, chard, collard greens, kohlrabi, lettuce, mustard, bok choy, celery, spinach. All of those you can get into the containers now. What you might not see if you've spotted a difference here, you won't see an asterisk by root vegetables, because root vegetables don't transplant well, except for green onions or onions, okay? And you can get onions going and then transplant them. But for the most part, if it's a above the ground plant, you can get it started now and then move it to the garden when it gets bigger, okay? Then we have warm season plants. Beans, corn, cucumber, squash, eggplant, okras, peppers, tomatoes, pumpkins, watermelon, cantaloupes. Any of these, watermelon, cantaloupe, cucumber, those are called cucurbits. And those, don't bother planting them early. You want to really wait. And you can get them planted and get them going, and get yourself a nice plant about 6 weeks before they need to go into the garden, and you'll have a nice plant, but don't do it any sooner than that. The same thing with your tomatoes and your peppers, okay? The other things that you can get out into the garden, as soon as you can work it, are peas, onions, parsnips, potatoes. How many people remember last year the complaint about the farmers? They couldn't get their potatoes in soon enough, and the reason that they're always wanting to get them into the ground really quick is because they're first to market, not for any other reason. And our climate allows that usually. But when we had all that snow in March, that was the biggest complaint about your potatoes, is because they couldn't get them into the ground because the ground was still frozen. So as long as you can work the soil, radishes, turnips, even cilantro will grow as soon as it starts getting warm and the soil warms up. You can get it growing, okay? Arugula.
We learned that last year. We don't like it either.
Yeah,
Just told me.
and it's always in what they call the mesclun mix, and generally that's the most that you get in there. So you're not getting much out of it if you buy a mix. I would recommend buying individual packets of things rather than mixes if you're prone to not liking some of the ingredients. Okay. Soil temperature. Soil temperature matters. It doesn't matter if it's 50 degrees outside. That's not the temperature of the soil. It will not germinate. And most of your cool season plants will work at 40 to 50 degrees. You can buy a thermometer if you want to put the soil, put down into your ground. Raised beds will actually help the soil get warm. Also, beds that have compost on them, that will help. The raised beds help get warmer faster because of the fact that they have multiple sides for that heat to access that soil to warm it up. So a lot of people plant in wood, a lot of people plant in plastic containers, galvanized containers and pots. Those things heat up really well, and if you're going to use one, get a pool noodle and put it on the top so that you don't touch it when it's really hot in the summer. Ask me how I know. You'll get burnt. Okay? But you have 40, 50, 60, and 70 degrees, and there are plants that have to have 70 degrees. Your peppers need 70 degrees. And then you have workable soil. And that you'll have that information on your package that says plant B for last frost. Okay? All that information is on the back of the packages. So, this chart, it's pretty complicated. But a lot of folks have greenhouses. A lot of folks have plastic. You can make a simple greenhouse with PVC and some rebar and plastic. Even if you're planting in the ground, or if you're planting in a box, you can take the rebar, stick it into the ground, kohlrabi and celery. Okay. You can get those growing under cover early. So it depends on how much produce you want to grow and how much you want to harvest out of it. And a lot of people are turning to gardening now. That's real important to them because of food issues, scarcity issues, opportunity to get things, the prices are going high. So a lot more people are looking at growing their own food. So these are just tricks and ways that you can expand your growing season to get things sooner. Then you have in March, now we're really cooking because we've got the beets, we've got the broccoli, we got cabbage, carrots, cauliflower, kale, lettuce, onions, peas. Peppers can get started, spinach, and then you can undercover tomatoes, back here to chard, turnips, radishes, kohlrabi, and celery. Lots of things expand as the temperatures warm up and you can get things going. And then our last frost date was the middle of April. You're, willy-nilly, okay? Plant whatever you want to plant, okay? But don't put it out in the garden until Mother's Day around here because you will get a chilling frost. Now there's ways that you can combat that. You can, take your tomato cages, put a plastic bag over the top of them, wrap them in shrink wrap. Different ways that you can create a micro greenhouse. If for some reason you've got your plants out in the garden and all of a sudden we get a cold snap and you panic and you don't want all your hard work to grow. So pick up a roll of shrink wrap, have it on hand. It makes a handy dandy, just wrap it around and then pull it off and it's done and you've protected your plants. It also helps when we're getting a great big windstorm that we usually get and your plants get beat, up.
Snapped off at the
Yeah, yeah, because they're too tall. So your tall plants, always remember to have a stake. If you're gonna get them out in the garden, you wanna put a plant stake in them. Peppers, tomatoes especially. But you can take a picture of this if you want to, for, get up close where you can see it. So this is a handy dandy display and the girls here have got seeds in. And this is a really neat, colorful display of what's cool season plants and what's warm season plants, okay? So you can take a picture of that if you want. And you can see little pictures there, and it's all the different varieties, pretty much of everything that you can plant. Not everything, that's available, obviously. So then you've got that, and then on this one here is your warm season, okay? So if it's a warm season plant or a cool season plant, when you go to the garden, you want to buy your plant seeds according to the planting. But if you want to consider doing a fall planting, that's these babies, the cool ones. And how many people have ever gone to the store at the end of summer thinking they're going to get seeds and they're gone? So keep in mind, if you want to do some fall planting, pick up your seeds enough to save them for your fall. And so I'm going to set this over here, but you can see eggplant, rutabaga, all these kinds of tomatillos, beans. Most all of your annuals are warm season plants. Almost all of them. Okay? So when you're looking at your tomatoes, your packages, tomatoes is something that's special. There's two things that are really important to look at for tomatoes. What is the variety? Obviously, how big it is. You want to look at how long it takes to grow. But what's super important is there's two varieties of tomatoes. There's determinate and indeterminate. How many has grown tomato plants that are 8 feet high? Been there. Can't get them, okay? Or you buy a tomato plant, you think you've gotten a really nice sturdy cage that you've spent like $5 for, and it doesn't work because it's fallen all over, it's growing and growing. The reason is because it's an indeterminate tomato. That means there's no end. It'll keep growing, okay? So for most people who don't have acres and or, great grand trellising systems, you want to look for a determinate tomato. And that information is on the back of your package. A determinate tomato, you will find them in cherry tomatoes, you will find them like San Marzano paste tomatoes, or you'll find like beefsteak tomatoes type. You want to look for a determinate, usually it will say bush on it. A determinate tomato plant will grow to be about 2 feet high. It will produce prolifically, and it'll produce whatever it is that you're wanting to grow. So I strongly recommend looking at the back of your package and looking for a determinate variety. You can go online and get some. I'm really excited, and I'm just gonna just share this. I looked specifically for determinate tomatoes, and I just got them in yesterday from Johnny Seeds. And there's a special variety called Grand Marshal that is specifically been engineered to withstand heat. Because how many people grow gardens? Do you all grow plants? Do you all grow gardens? How many grew tomatoes last year? How many people had a big long spell where they didn't have any tomatoes, all they had was nothing but green ones later? Okay? That's because they can't handle heat. It's a warm season plant, but after about 85 to 90 degrees for tomatoes, they stop pollinating. The pollen on them is a powder, and it needs to float. And when it gets hot, it gets sticky, and it doesn't pollinate. And the plants go, oh my gosh, it's too hot. They quit putting out flowers, and they don't do anything. So I'm excited. I've got these seeds that just came in. I'm going to try them, the Grand Marshals. I'll give you some feedback and find out how well they do, because they have been engineered to withstand the heat and continue to produce during hot seasons. Something that was uncommon, actually even in the Master Gardener program before I came, was putting shade cloth on. And now I've got Master Gardeners, they're even putting them in the demonstration garden. And that's where those hoops come in, those PVC hoops. Or you can make a T structure and put them above it so that you can get under it pretty easy. But the shade cloth usually comes in rolls, and it's usually 6 feet wide. It's big enough to handle, cover east, west, north, south, and it comes in all kinds of lengths. I would strongly urge you to purchase some shade cloth now before we get 110 degrees and people are running around finding shade cloth and there isn't any. Okay, so get it now and save it. It lasts and holds up very well. Take it off, fold it up, save it to next year, okay? You will be amazed how much different the temperature is of the air above and below. It's good for broccoli, for cabbage, for, those things that like cooler weather temperatures, lettuce, spinach. Okay, so you can use it a multitude of ways and get your plants saved from that scorching heat that we get sometimes. And we get it. We get a couple of weeks of it every year. But anything above 90, put shade on your tomato plants. Anything above 90. Okay? So you want to look at the back of your packages. You want to see, how long does it take, all the information, how deep to plant your seeds, how far apart to space them, how much room that mature plant needs, how tall it's going to get. All information on the back of your seeds, as well as generally when to plant them. For some reason, these don't have the little map on them. So you might have to look a little closer. Like these are a 70 to 90 degree black cream tomato. Peppers of any variety. It doesn't matter if it's a bell or any other spicy pepper. These take a lot of heat to get them germinated. They're in the 70 degree range. So how do we plant things when we need 70 degrees? How do we get it? Because the soil isn't going to be 70 degrees until July, right? Heat mats, okay? A heat mat. Now you can get a heat mat. They keep the temperature of the soil between 70 and 85 degrees, okay? If you're going to start seeds, everybody needs at least one of these in your arsenal. You can use it until the seeds germinate, and then start them another plant. Almost every single seed that we can plant right now, we can germinate on a seed mat. It'll be on the seed mat a couple of weeks. By that time, it's ready to come off, and then you can put something else on. So you don't have to have an army of them. But invest in a seed mat, they last a long time, and it's critical. Another thing that you're gonna have, if you're gonna start your seeds indoors, are lights. They don't need light until the plant hits, about the top of your container. Until you start seeing those green leaves, you don't need light. But then you have to have light. And there's a variety of them that you can get. Some are specialized that are just blue and red, which are the two spectrums that you really need for growth. Otherwise, a lot of them are full spectrum. But the idea is that as the plants start to grow, you put the light down lower, and then as they continue to grow, you will raise that up. So that's one of the things that you will probably need, at least 2 different kinds of lights, or a couple of sets, some that you can keep close, and some that you can put up higher in order to encourage your plants to grow tall. You can grow plants in your house. If you don't have a heat mat, put them in a sunny window, and as long as you keep your house at 70 or above, you might be able to get them to grow that way, but I would still recommend a heat mat to get them going. And a sunny window, but invest in a heat light. Otherwise, you're going to be turning your plants every other day in order to keep them from bending. When you get your plants up and growing, you want to have air movement in the room. You want to have a fan going because that actually encourages strengthening of the stems. It's all seen, you grow your plants and they're really weak, thin, they flop over as soon as you put them in the ground and stuff. That's because they haven't been hardened off enough. They haven't got enough strength. So you want to go ahead and make sure you put a fan in there. So, let me see if I got one more. I think this here is just some other information here about start dates as far as when to start and when to transplant them outside. So when you get them started, we still have to pay attention to when we want them outside. But you can see, last frost date, start indoors. Is it time to start a lot of things? But the only thing we can really actually see here to start is lettuce, 222. Getting pretty close. Okay? Celery, 227. Getting pretty close. But for a lot of these things, we actually need to wait. And there are some things we don't ever start. We just direct sow. So I'm going to move around to this side. You guys can look at that in a second. So, how many people plant in a setup like this? We all, we've all been trained to plant in this. And that's a great way. It works really well. If you need a lid, you can see that here's a dome, here's a taller one. And we have our individual things. You can buy cubes to put in there, peat pots to put in there, or you can just put soil in there. And then you have a drain container. Okay. So there's nothing wrong with this. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. I'm going to show you something a little different. Okay? And the reason I'm going to show you a little different, so I can do this with confidence. In a Master Gardener class, I love to tell this story of a nursery up in Spokane. He's got 7 huge greenhouses that are bigger than this building, than this whole store. They're huge. And he tells the story of how he starts his seeds. First thing he does is he buys all of his milk in 1-quart jugs. And he saves them. And his family likes yogurt. And so they save the cups. And his family likes Chinese food. And they save the chopsticks. And the way that he plants is he takes and cuts the milk container down to where it has a lid and a tray. And he takes 2 cups from his yogurt cups of soil and puts it in there. And then he pats it down. And this is the part that will amaze you. He plants an entire seed packet in that one little container. And then waters it, and he can fit 5 of them in a tray like this. So you can imagine, you plant this, how many seed packets are we going to get in this? 1? Maybe. Probably have some left over, because some of them have got really tiny seeds, and you're going to use up the whole tray. So he came up with that system of using these milk containers, that you can plant a whole seed packet in it, and then move it from a heat mat to a heat mat with light. He made these racks, the heat mat with a light, and then it goes up in a 6-week progressive until it's finally at the top. It's after 6 weeks. It has no heat mat, it has no light, it has no dome, it has nothing on it. And he takes it and goes out to his greenhouse, pours it out onto a table, dibbles out those little plants and separates them out, puts them in a 4-inch pot, pokes it in, and then takes it out to his greenhouse that's unheated. He's got 5 huge, or seven huge greenhouses, okay? You can get almost 100% germination by doing that. Now, I didn't want to go out and buy a whole bunch of quarts of milk in order to get those. You know, I can't drink that much milk. But I did come up with a similar way that works really well.
I recognize that container.
Who goes to Costco? What is that?
Those are the muffins.
That's a muffin container, okay? This is a muffin container. And guess what you have in a muffin container? A bottom and a top and a place to put the dirt, which is what? A bottom, a top, and a place to put the dirt. You can do this if you want to. And if you're not comfortable dibbling things out, like I said, nothing wrong with it. Another way to bulk plant, is, if you don't have a bunch of muffin containers and you still like this, you can get these kind of trays. And you can put several plants in one of these and do the same thing. Right, you can look on YouTube. My name is Linda Stock, and I've got a full video that shows how these work. But I'm just going to give you a quick demonstration. And I went ahead and filled these up. You can see there's about 1.5 inches worth of planting area here. Okay, and you just fill it up, press it down. Now, I don't use a full bag of soil every time, so one of the things you want to do about your soil, your potting mix, you can use any potting mix. They've got some black gold over there. They've got some Frog Farms over here. It's really great soil. I used that, last year. But you want to pack it down. And if you've opened it, don't forget to give it some water. You're not going to be planting all your plants at one time. So open it up. It's usually moist. Do your starts, and then water it, and then roll it back up so it stays moist. Otherwise, it'll dry out. So here's my handy dandy chopstick. Okay, and this is how easy it is to make a separate container and packages. Look. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 20 planting blocks in this space, and look it, I can poke a hole in it. Just that easy, okay? this is what you do when you have what we call seams, seeds that you can see, okay? If you can see them, do this. I like these because here's my seed mat. I can get 2 on one seed mat. Whereas one big tray like this will only hold 1. So I can kind of double my planting pleasure. Who knows, remembers the double income. So you can poke them out, poke them holes in it, plant your seed, and put it in the hole, cover it over, and water it. Or you can take the container, start it off the same way, press it down, and grab your smaller seeds. Now for these I grabbed some poppy seeds. These are definitely, good job. Who said it? Who said it? No seams. Who said it? Good job. No seams, all right? So no seams. The best thing you want to do for any delivery method for any of your seeds is you want to go ahead and shake them out into your hand so that you can disperse them evenly across the surface. So you're just going to sprinkle them across the surface. And this is an entire package. Can you imagine how many packages I would use if I was using a cube? Okay? I'd be using just a lot. Now, where do you get your seeds? Y'all go to the store and buy them, right? What would I tell you? You say if I told you that if you wanted poppies, you could go to your baking section in the store and get poppy seeds. You can spend $3 or $2 or $1 a packet, and you can get enough to plant a few. Or you can go to the herb department. Pepper flakes, tons of pepper seeds, okay? Fennel seed out of the bulk section over at Winco, okay? Dill seed, mustard seed, anise, celery seed, coriander makes your cilantro, okay? You can get a lot more seeds out of the baking section. Just make sure they haven't been roasted. Like I was looking at sesame or sunflower seed. No, sesame seeds. They're roasted. Don't roast them up and work. But also, you like peppers? You like tomatoes? You like cucumbers? Take your seeds out and put them on a paper towel and let them dry. And you will have seeds of the kind of fruit and product that you like to eat. You've just bought it, right? So if you just bought it, save the seeds, plant it again, okay?
Question. Can you just take that plant, leave a couple fruit on it, and hang that sucker and let it dry over the season and have seeds?
You mean like
There you
these?
go.
Yeah. You mean like these? Because I do not clean out my garden at the end of the year. And I would recommend you do not either. The reason is because you provide a lot of nutrients that go back into the soil, and you have some critters that like to eat things. But like these beans, they look terrible, right? But these are just regular string beans. Then when I open them up, I have green bean seeds. Okay, so don't be afraid to leave some on your vines and leave them alone. This looks really bad. I just pulled this off. This was a cantaloupe. Okay, just pulled it off of the dried vines like yesterday. got a
I was
question?
just gonna add to that, and you have a better chance of it being pollinated as well.
Absolutely.
If it's on their lawn.
Absolutely. So this looks terrible, but this is Hale's Best cantaloupe that I just pulled out. So don't be afraid to leave things over. Don't be afraid to let things go to seed. Celery seed, celery grows and it turns into seed, and then you can cook with it. You can plant it. It doesn't matter. And celery is one of those things that's actually great. It will grow. It'll grow back. It's terrific.
If you use seeds from your tomatoes that you buy from the store or something like that, do they need to be organic tomatoes?
It would be best to get an organic tomato. And you can pick the seeds out and put them on a paper towel to dry. As the season gets closer, you can actually go to the store, buy the tomato, slice it, just slice it, and lay those into a container, put some soil over it, and cover it.
Oh.
Now, a lot of times everybody, the information on the seed pack, of course, is really important. It tells you how far, how wide, guess where's that information available today?
Online?
The internet. Okay. The internet. You can find out anything on the internet. You can get all the planting information on the internet. So if you forgot, how far, how wide, how deep, Google it on the internet. You'll find the information. You can print up all the information. You can create yourself a little folder to be able to monitor and know when to plant your things. But what I like about these things here, one of the things about, CMs and no-CMs, when it's a no-CM, you sprinkle it all across the top, and then you want to cover it with soil. These things usually, how many of you have ever tried to cover it with a 1/16? How many of you have seen that? Cover with a 1/16 of an inch of soil. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
I have. How do you gauge 1/16 of an inch of soil? You're gonna make a row with a 16. You're gonna make a hole, 1/16 of an inch. No. Okay. So you just want to take your soil and you want to just sprinkle it right over the top, very lightly, and you want to water it in. And this is going to look like a soupy mess to you. See how wet that looks? I will have to water this again before I put it on the heat mat, because there's some dry spots that it'll absorb and dry out. But you water it, snap it shut, and put it on your heat mat, and you leave it alone for about a week, okay? You can check it, and it snaps up really well. You notice you don't have to have a bunch of drain holes. Water it. The moisture will collect on the top. It'll just keep raining back in. Okay. But you will, in about a week's time, notice that it starts to dry out. If you don't see water droplets on the top, put more water on it. And that's the same for these, okay? If you want to plant this way, plant this way. The same rule applies. Put your seeds in, water it, put the lid on it, put it on a heat mat, and then watch it and make sure that you still retain the moisture. I have literally a stack of these 2 feet high in my greenhouse. I don't use them because I'm not real good at getting water in all the little holes. I'm just not. But one nice thing about this is that I can take them from here, and when they hit the top, open the lid in a room that has air circulating. And then you can dibble that out, and I wish I had some that were growing, but this is where this also comes in handy. When you want to separate out your plants, you can use this little tool to gently grab a hold of the stem of your plant and then separate it out, and already have your 4-inch pot ready that you can poke a hole in. And this is a wonderful device. You've got your 4-inch pot with the dirt in it. You poke a hole in it, you take your plant, you separate it out, and you use this tool to make sure you get all the roots down in it, and then poke it in, settle it down in there, water it, and you're done. So it's a lot easier than, I don't know how many of these things I've punched inside out trying to get the plant out, or ruined them. But you can do it, it's careful.